My name is Gwen, and I'm 29 years old. Just a few hours ago, my mother dug her nails into my bare wrist inside a stuffy lawyer's office, viciously whispering that if I got a single penny from my grandmother's will, she would make my entire life a living hell. And looking into her cold, flat eyes, I knew she absolutely meant every single word. The silver-haired attorney read through 6 agonizing pages, handing the beloved family home, the massive life savings, and every piece of precious jewelry straight to my mother. She smirked at me like she had completely destroyed me and already won the war. But then the lawyer calmly removed his glasses, touched a hidden folder, and announced a secret legal amendment filed exactly 4 days before my grandmother took her last breath, and my mother's victorious smile instantly turned to pure ash. Before I tell you what happened next, if you enjoy stories like this, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this one truly resonates with you. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you all are listening from. Let me take you back 7 months. It is the last time my grandmother ever called me, though I didn't know it then. It's a chilly Thursday evening in October. The wind is rattling my apartment windows. I'm sitting at my small kitchen table, grading 3rd grade spelling tests with a blue pen. The apartment is totally quiet. Then my phone lights up. The screen says, "Grandma Eleanor." I smile and pick it up before the second ring. "Gwenny," she says. Instantly my stomach drops. Her voice is paper thin. It isn't the warm, booming voice that used to call me in from the backyard when it was time for dinner. Something underneath her tone sounds hollow, almost fragile. "Grandma, are you okay?" I ask, my hand freezing over the test papers. "I'm fine, sweetheart, just listen to me." A heavy pause stretches between us. I can hear her breathing through the receiver. It is slow, careful, and tired. Why does she sound so far away? "I need you to remember something. No matter what happens, I've taken care of it." I set my pen down. The blue ink bleeds a little onto the paper. "Taken care of what?" "Just remember, promise me." "I promise, but Grandma, what is going on?" "Tell me about your kids," she says, her voice suddenly shifting gears. "The little ones at school. How is the boy who draws dinosaurs on everything?" And just like that, the door closes. She changes the subject. "But that is Eleanor Worthington for you. She is the woman who raised me far more than my own mother ever did. She was the one who picked me up from school every afternoon while my mom was out networking, lunching, or doing whatever always seemed to matter more than I did. Grandma taught me how to make a flaky pie crust from scratch, her hands covering my tiny ones. She read Stuart Little to me 3 times in one single summer just because I loved the voices she did. And every time my mother's sharp words made me feel small, Grandma would sit me down on her wooden porch swing, look me right in the eye, and say, "You have more spine than you think, Gweeny." We talk for 13 minutes that night. She asks about my students, my tiny apartment, and whether I'm eating enough hot meals, normal, everyday things. But her voice never regains its strength, and she never explains what her strange promise meant. The next morning, an uneasy feeling twists in my gut. I call her back. The phone rings twice. My mother picks up. "Mom, I'm calling for Grandma. Mom's resting. Don't call this number again." Click. The line goes completely dead. I stare at my phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. What just happened? Over the next week, I call 12 times. I start keeping a tally on a yellow sticky note by my phone, like some kind of sad, desperate scoreboard. 3 times the call goes straight to voicemail. Twice my mother picks up, hears my breathing, and hangs up without a single word. The rest of the time it just rings and rings into the empty air. On day 9, the panic becomes too much. I grab my keys and drive 45 minutes to Grandma's house on Mulberry Street. When I pull up, the front porch light is off. That is incredibly wrong. Grandma keeps that yellow bulb burning until 11 o'clock every single night. She always has. I march up the steps and knock. Nothing. The silence is heavy. I knock harder, my knuckles stinging. Finally, the deadbolt turns. The door opens, but it's not Grandma's soft face looking back at me. It's Ron, my stepfather. He fills the entire doorway, his thick arms crossed over his chest. He is wearing his dirty work boots inside the house, something Grandma would absolutely never allow. "Your mother said no visitors," he grunts. "Eleanor needs rest. She doesn't need your drama." "She's my grandmother, Ron. I just want to see her for 5 minutes. Please, just let me see her."
"Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Gwen." He steps back and slams the door in my face.
I stand alone on the dark porch, the cold wind biting through my jacket, and listen to the heavy metal lock click securely into place. I am locked out of my own childhood home. The next day, my hands shake as I dial Mrs. Peterson, Grandma's next-door neighbor for 35 years. She sounds deeply confused when I ask about the house. "Oh, honey," she says gently. "Donna told all of us that Eleanor moved to a private care facility up in Riverdale." My breath catches in my throat. Grandma hasn't moved anywhere. I know this for a fact. When I drove to Mulberry Street yesterday, I looked up at her second-story bedroom window. The lamp was on, the brass one with the green glass shade she's had since I was 6 years old. She was in that house. She was 20 feet away from where I stood freezing on her porch. That is the exact moment something dark and terrifying shifts inside me. My mother isn't just taking care of Grandma. My mother is keeping her prisoner, and she is making absolutely sure I can't get close enough to find out why. 4 months pass, 122 days of pure suffocating silence. Day 14, voicemail. Day 42, blocked number. Day 89, a locked door and drawn curtains. The clock is ticking, and I am drowning in a fast, brutal blur of helpless panic. I do not get to see my grandmother a single time, but I don't give up. Every Sunday I sit at my kitchen table and write her a bright, cheerful card. Short things, so it doesn't look like I'm trying to start a fight. I tell her how my dinosaur drawing student won a prize. I tell her about the autumn weather. I write that I tried to bake her famous apple crisp recipe and completely burned the top crust. I mail them all directly to Mulberry Street. Does she read them? Does she even know I'm trying? I have no idea if she ever gets to hold my words in her hands. My mother calls me exactly once during those 4 agonizing months. It isn't to update me on Grandma's failing health. It isn't to ask how I'm coping. "Mom's changing her estate plan," Donna says, her voice like cracking ice. "It's what she wants. Don't make a scene about it." I grip the phone so tightly my knuckles ache. "What do you mean she's changing it?" "It means it is handled. It means you should just focus on your little teaching job and let the adults manage the real things." My little teaching job. I make $38,000 a year. I had already stayed up late looking into hiring an elder law attorney to fight for visitation. The retainer fee alone would eat up 4 full months of my rent. I have absolutely no proof of elder abuse. All I have is a sick feeling in my gut and the memory of a heavy door locked in my face. I am completely, utterly powerless, and my mother knows it. She is banking on it. Then, exactly a week later, my phone rings. The caller ID shows it's Sarah. We used to play hopscotch together in grade school. Now she works at the local bank downtown. "Gwen," she whispers into the receiver. Her words rush out in a frantic, breathless wave, like she is terrified someone is listening. "I could lose my job for telling you this, but your mother came in yesterday. She tried to completely empty Eleanor's joint accounts, but she couldn't. The system flagged the transaction. The accounts are completely frozen. Eleanor locked them down herself." My heart skips a painful beat. Grandma did something. Even from a sickbed she fought back. But how could she possibly manage that? Then early December arrives. It is a freezing Thursday night. My phone vibrates violently on my nightstand. An unknown number flashes on the screen. Then a text message appears. 5 short lines. "Your grandmother is in hospice now. She asks about you every day. I'm sorry. I can't say more. Please don't give up on her." No name, no explanation. Just a tiny, fragile lifeline pushed through a crack in the massive brick wall my mother built. I read the message 8 times. I take a screenshot so I can never lose it. I press the cold glass of my phone flat against my chest like it is a letter from a war zone. Because honestly, it is. Someone on the inside knows the dark truth. Someone is watching out for us. But who? I slide down the wall and sit on my apartment floor. A dusty cardboard box of old photos rests open in my lap. I pull out a faded picture from my 9th birthday. Grandma and I are blowing out candles together. Her warm arm is wrapped tightly around my small shoulders, and we are both laughing so hard our eyes are squeezed shut. My mother isn't in the frame. I don't even think she was in the house that day. I start doing the math in my head. Not money math. Loss math. If I stay quiet now, I lose the chance to say goodbye to the only person who ever truly fought for me. I lose every photograph, every handwritten journal, and every piece of delicate jewelry Grandma promised would be mine someday. I lose the childhood house where I learned what real love was actually supposed to feel like. But far worse than all of that, I lose myself, because this is my tragic pattern. When I was 19, Grandma gave me her old blue Chevy so I could drive to my college classes. My mother sold it within 2 weeks, claiming it was an ugly eyesore in her driveway. I swallowed the hurt.
I said nothing. When my mother told her church friends I was a distant, ungrateful daughter, I said nothing. When she completely forgot to attend my college graduation, I said nothing. 29 years of absolutely nothing. If I stay quiet right now, Grandma dies thinking I didn't care enough to fight for her. I don't sleep a single wink that night. By morning, the sun rises and I finally have a plan. It isn't a great one, but it is a start. Years ago, Grandma added me as a secondary contact on her life insurance. I remember it clearly because she made me write the long policy number on a white index card. "Keep this somewhere safe, Gwenny," she had said softly, "just in case." At the time, I thought she was just being overly dramatic, but now I understand. She was thinking ahead, long before I ever realized anyone needed to. I dial the insurance company. After 45 agonizing minutes on hold, a kind representative confirms my absolute worst fear. Grandma is receiving end-of-life hospice care through Meadowview Home Health. I hang up, grab my winter coat, and drive straight there. The hospice lobby smells strongly of harsh floor cleaner and flowers that are exactly 1 day past fresh. I march up to the front desk and give my name. The receptionist types on her keyboard, pauses, and looks up at me with practiced, hollow sympathy. "I'm sorry, ma'am, your name isn't on the approved visitor list."
I'm her granddaughter, I plead, my voice cracking under the fluorescent lights. I am her only granddaughter. I understand, the woman sighs. But the primary contact, Donna Mitchells, provided a very specific list. We are strictly required to follow it. My mother put together a VIP list of people allowed to watch my grandmother die, and she intentionally left me off it. I do not just walk away. I can't. My blood is practically boiling. I walk briskly around the back of the brick building. My chest feels incredibly tight. My lungs burn with the freezing air. I spot a heavy metal service door propped open by a rolling laundry cart. I slip inside. The back hallway is like an icebox. I creep quietly past a dim utility closet, ducking low behind a metal supply trolley. Room 114. That is Grandma's room. I am barely 10 feet away when the heavy wooden door suddenly cracks open. I press my back flat against the freezing cinder block wall, holding my breath so hard my vision spots. It is Ron. He backs out of the room, cornering a young doctor in the hallway. "Just up the meds," Ron hisses. His meaty face is flushed dark red, his voice vicious and ugly. "She doesn't have much time anyway. Stop dragging this out." My stomach drops into a terrifying freefall. They aren't just waiting for her to pass away. They are actively trying to speed it up. As Ron turns and storms angrily down the corridor, he bumps against the wall. A crumpled piece of paper falls out of his bulky jacket pocket and flutters to the linoleum floor. I wait until the hall is completely clear. Then I dart forward and snatch it up. It looks like a standard pharmacy receipt. But as I turn the crumpled paper over in my trembling hands, my breath completely leaves my body. Written on the back of the crumpled receipt, in Grandma's shaky, uneven cursive handwriting, is my phone number. My exact cell phone number. She'd been desperately trying to sneak it out to someone. Before I can fully process this horrifying detail, I hear heavy, familiar footsteps returning down the hall. Panicking, I turn and sprint blindly back out the service doors, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I reach my old car in the parking lot and lock myself inside. I sit there for an entire hour. The engine is completely off. My cold hands grip the steering wheel, and I'm genuinely not sure when they actually started shaking. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I see a woman in blue medical scrubs walking slowly out the side entrance. She is middle-aged, deeply tired, and carrying a worn canvas tote bag. She reaches her small sedan, then pauses. She turns her head and looks directly across the empty asphalt. She looks straight at me through my dirty windshield and holds my terrified gaze for 4, maybe 5 seconds. Then, without a single word, she turns away, unlocks her car, and drives off. I don't know her name, not yet. 3 tortuous weeks later, my phone rings at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning. My mother's name on the screen feels exactly like a heavy stone dropping into deep water. "Mom passed this morning. The funeral is Friday. Wear something appropriate." Not "I'm sorry, Gwen." Not "she went peacefully." Not "are you okay?" Just flat, cold instructions. That is all I get. She even manages to squeeze in a cruel dress code. Friday eventually comes. The old stone church is only half full.
There are a few friendly neighbors, some older book club women, and a handful of distant cousins I haven't seen in over 15 years. Grandma's dark mahogany casket sits heavily beneath an extravagant, expensive spray of white lilies that my mother almost certainly picked out simply for the photographs. And there is Donna taking center stage. She is dabbing her completely dry eyes with a lace handkerchief, dramatically hugging every single person who walks through the heavy oak doors. "Ah, I was right there with her every single day until the very end," she loudly tells Mrs. Peterson. She says it with so much projection the whole front pew can easily hear her fake sorrow. I never ever left her side. I stand silently in the very back row clutching my purse. Nobody asks how I am doing. Nobody questions where I have been for 4 months.
They already have Donna's perfectly crafted version of the tragic story. Ron passes me on his way to the dark restroom hallway. He doesn't even look at my face. He just mutters,
"Don't cause any embarrassing trouble today."
I watch my mother openly accept warm sympathy for a death she deliberately made lonelier and harder than it ever had to be. And in that awful moment, something incredibly deep inside me turns very still and very, very cold. Then, I feel a soft, gentle hand rest lightly on my shoulder. I turn slowly. It is the exhausted woman from the hospice parking lot. The same tired, kind eyes. She is wearing a dark, simple blouse now instead of her blue scrubs, but I recognize her face instantly. She leans close to my ear. "She talked about you absolutely every day, before I can even force a single word out of my dry throat. Before I can even ask for her first name." The woman steps back, turns quickly, and completely disappears through the side door of the church. Every day Grandma asked about me. Every single day. 2 agonizing weeks after the quiet funeral, an official email quietly lands in my chaotic inbox. It is from the law office of Harrison Caldwell. Subject line: Estate of Eleanor R. Worthington. Reading of last will and testament. Monday, 3 p.m. Please confirm attendance. My cell phone rings before I even finish reading the second sentence. It's Donna. "You got the email?" "Yes. Just show up and keep quiet." Why would I need to keep quiet? Because there's absolutely nothing in that will for you, Gwen. How do you know that? A long, heavy pause follows, then her voice drops flat and terrifyingly final. Because I made sure of it. 6 brutal words. That is all it takes to absolutely confirm what I had sickeningly feared for 4 silent months. My mother didn't just take care of Grandma's fragile body, she took very close care of the messy paperwork too. She systematically made sure every single dollar, every old floorboard, and every precious piece of my grandmother's life was pointed forcefully in exactly one direction, hers. I set the phone down gently on my scratched kitchen counter and stare blankly at the popcorn ceiling. I have absolutely no lawyer. I have 0 savings to hire one. I have no digital recording of that threatening phone call. It is simply my fragile word against her loud one, and in this incredibly toxic family, my word has never been worth very much at all. I seriously think about desperately calling one of those free legal hotlines. I think about driving straight to the downtown police station and begging them to listen. I think about standing up in the fancy lawyer's office on Monday and screaming what Donna did to everyone. But with what actual proof? A blocked phone log on my cell? A fleeting parking lot memory? A total stranger who briefly touched my shoulder at a funeral and quickly walked away? I simply do not have a strong hand to play. My ruthless mother tightly holds every single card in the deck, but somewhere deep underneath all that swirling panic and heavy grief, I softly hear Grandma's strong voice from that chilling October phone call. Thin but absolutely certain, I've taken care of it. I still genuinely do not know what that mysterious promise means, but Monday afternoon I will be exactly where I need to be, and I promise you I will not keep quiet. Not this time. Sunday night arrives slowly. My tiny apartment is totally quiet except for the loud, rhythmic hum of the ancient refrigerator and the steady sound of my own anxious breathing. I am sitting completely cross-legged on my unmade bed, an old, dusty shoebox of childhood photographs open in my lap. There is a bright picture of Grandma and me at the noisy county fair, laughing with powdered funnel cake sugar on our chins. There is another of Grandma patiently teaching me how to sew a small yellow button, my tiny fingers clumsy and nervous, her wrinkled hands steady and warm over mine. But then I find the one of Grandma at my lonely high school graduation.
She is standing alone, proudly holding a giant cardboard sign that simply says, "That's my beautiful girl," in bright red block letters she'd carefully painted all by herself. My phone buzzes violently against the mattress. It's a text from Ron. "Tomorrow is entirely about respecting your mother's great sacrifices. Eleanor would be ashamed of you if you made a fuss." I read the text twice. My vision blurs with pure anger. Then I set the phone face down on my quilt. Eleanor would be ashamed? He actually typed those horrible words. The exact man who firmly locked me out of her house. The guy who stood in her doorway like a cheap bouncer at a club and ordered me not to cause drama while my grandmother was actively dying on the other side of the plaster wall.
I pick up the bright photo from the Sunny County Fair one last time. Grandma is looking cheerfully at the camera, but her steady hand is resting firmly on my shoulder. It is always right there on my shoulder. "You have more spine than you think, Gwenny." And then, the other fading voice from that final confusing phone call echoes through my quiet room. "No matter what happens, I've taken care of it." I put the precious photos safely back in the cardboard box. I set my alarm clock for 6:30. I carefully lay out a simple charcoal dress across a chair. It is clean, modest, and something Grandma would definitely approve of. It feels like armor. I do not know what tomorrow holds. I do not know what kind of trap is waiting in that fancy lawyer's office, but I decide something important in the dark, with my grandmother's fierce voice echoing in my chest. I am going to show up. I am going to sit bravely in that chair, and I am absolutely not going to let anyone make me feel small. Not tomorrow. Not ever again. Monday, 2:45 p.m. The law office of Harrison Caldwell sits quietly on the third floor of an old weathered brick building on Market Street, right above a dusty hardware store. I take the narrow wooden stairs very slowly. Each heavy step creaks loudly, almost like it is announcing my dreaded arrival to the enemies above. The conference room is surprisingly small. It features dark wood-paneled walls, a long oak table, and a single tall window that looks out onto the busy town square, where little kids are playfully chasing pigeons in the bright afternoon sun. The stuffy space smells faintly of bitter coffee and aging paper. I am not the first person to arrive. Donna is already seated comfortably to the immediate left of the head of the table. Her blonde hair is freshly blown out. She wears a sleek black dress and delicate pearl earrings. Grandma's pearl earrings. I noticed them shining on her earlobes before the official will has even been read. She couldn't even wait until the dirt settled. Ron sits closely beside her, his thick arms tightly folded, his heavy jaw set. He completely refuses to acknowledge my presence. Aunt Laura, my mother's nervous younger sister, is directly across from them, tightly clutching her leather purse in her lap like it is a floating life preserver. We make very brief eye contact. She gives me a tight, incredibly anxious smile before quickly looking down. Two older women I recognize from Grandma's Sunday church sit quietly near the window. Betty and Joyce, Grandma's closest lifelong friends. They nod politely at me, but there is something deeply uncomfortable behind their eyes. It is thick pity, or perhaps harsh judgment. Donna's spectacular funeral performance is obviously still very fresh in their minds. At the absolute head of the table sits Harrison Caldwell. He is in his 70s, silver-haired, with wire reading glasses perched precisely at the tip of his nose. He radiates a calm authority that instantly fills the tense room. Right in front of him rests a thick document folder, held together by a metal binder clip. But I immediately notice a strange detail. The beige folder isn't just one messy stack, it is two separate sections. The top pile is much thinner, securely held by a bright blue clip. Beneath it sits a second section. It is significantly thicker, tightly secured with a bright red one. Two distinct sections, two different clips. "Thank you all for being here," Caldwell announces, his voice deep and smooth. "We will begin in just a moment." I take the very last empty chair at the far end of the long table, sitting completely alone. Caldwell opens the blue-clipped section and neatly arranges his crisp white papers. The stuffy room quickly settles into the kind of heavy, suffocating silence that actually presses against your eardrums. Then my mother suddenly moves. She leans aggressively toward me. It isn't casual, it isn't subtle. She boldly reaches across the empty gap between our wooden chairs and viciously grabs my bare wrist. Her sharp fingers close around my skin like a steel cuff. I gasp softly as I feel her manicured nails dig painfully into the thin, sensitive skin right above my racing pulse. She pulls me roughly closer. Her strong perfume is overpowering. It smells like sweet jasmine mixed with something harsh and chemical underneath.
"If you get a single penny today," she hisses, her whisper dripping with pure venom, "I will make the rest of your life a living hell. Do not test me."
Her pale eyes are entirely steady and completely flat. She means the vicious threat exactly the way cruel people mean awful things they have practiced in the mirror. I do not pull my trapped hand away. I do not flinch or blink. I look straight back into her cold eyes, and for the very first time in my entire 29 years of existence, I do not look down first. Something profound has finally shifted inside my soul, even though I cannot quite name it yet. Maybe it is the 4 stolen months. Maybe it is the fake funeral tears, or maybe it is the sickening fact that she is proudly wearing Grandma's favorite earrings like a shiny trophy. I say absolutely nothing, but my glare does not waver. Donna finally releases my aching wrist and straightens up in her leather chair, looking terribly satisfied with her intimidation tactic. I glance quickly toward the head of the oak table. Caldwell is watching us. He doesn't utter a single syllable, but his sharp eyes drop deliberately to the exact spot where Donna's cruel hand just was. He stares at my wrist, where the angry white marks from her tight grip are already slowly fading into red. Something subtle shifts in his professional expression. It isn't surprise. It is something much quieter. Confirmation. Then he finally opens the thick folder, and in that brilliant, terrifying fraction of a second, I finally realize the truth. My mother isn't acting out of supreme confidence. She is lashing out because she is absolutely terrified of what those hidden papers might actually say. Caldwell begins formally with the original will, dated precisely 15 months ago. Before he even reads a single word, he looks directly over his wire glasses at Donna, his deep voice incredibly sharp and deliberate. As per strict legal procedure in this state, I will first read the original document in its absolute entirety. Only after this step will we address the final, legally binding instruments. But Donna doesn't even hear the serious warning. Her absolute, blinding greed completely deafens her to the obvious trap he is setting right in front of her face. He reads slowly and clearly. He reads the exact way a careful person reads when they know every single syllable matters profoundly. On thick page 1 and 2, the beloved family home at Tokens Measure Units, address Cardinal 514 Mulberry Street, left entirely to Donna Mitchell's, preserve_order, true. The very house where I learned how to awkwardly walk. The cozy house where Grandma read me bedtime stories on the faded porch swing. The cold house where I stood freezing outside and couldn't get past my own stepfather at the front door. All Donna's. Page 3. The massive savings accounts, totaling $920,000, painstakingly accumulated over Eleanor Worthington's entire exhausting working life as a public school librarian and through careful, decades-long smart investments, left completely to Donna Mitchell's. Donna shifts slightly in her leather chair, a tiny, sickeningly satisfied motion of total victory. Page 5. The beautiful heirloom jewelry collection. Precious pieces passed down faithfully from Grandma's own resilient mother, including a gorgeous, delicate ruby ring Grandma once promised, holding my teenage hand, would be mine on my wedding day, left permanently to Donna Mitchell's. Page 6. The reliable vehicle, all the antique furniture, hundreds of rare books, and every single personal effect, strictly to be distributed entirely at Donna's sole discretion. At Donna's discretion, meaning my cruel mother decides all by herself whether I am legally allowed to have a single childhood photograph or even a chipped teacup to remember the woman who raised me. My mother turns her head to look directly at me. She doesn't even bother hiding her vicious smirk now. The raw look on her perfectly made-up face is total victory, clean and open and almost peaceful.
"See," she whispers loudly, her voice barely carrying above a soft hiss in the stuffy room. She always knew who was actually there for her when it mattered.
Ron leans heavily over the armrest and squeezes Donna's knee, a little, sickening celebration of their massive payday. Aunt Laura looks nervously at me from across the long oak table. Her pale lips part slightly, like she desperately wants to say something comforting, but she quickly drops her anxious gaze to her purse instead. Betty and Joyce exchange a long, uncomfortable glance near the sunny window. They absolutely refuse to look at my face. I sit completely still. My cold, clammy hands are pressed totally flat on the smooth wood table. Inside my pounding head, I hear Grandma's frail voice echoing from the telephone. I've taken care of it, but right now, sitting in this awful chair, that sweet promise sounds exactly like a tragic, desperate lie. Donna doesn't even wait for Caldwell to politely finish the final legal page. She stands up dramatically, rustling her expensive black dress, and forcefully dabs her totally dry eyes with a white tissue. It is the exact same choreographed fake grief routine from the church funeral. She addresses the silent room like an actress accepting a major award. I know this is incredibly emotional for everyone here today, but Mom always knew deeply in her heart who was really there for her. I gave up absolutely everything to take round-the-clock care of her frail body. I quit my favorite book club. I totally rearranged my entire busy schedule, but I was faithfully there every single morning and every late night. She pauses perfectly, turning slowly to face me. Gwen couldn't even bother to visit her dying grandmother. Not once in 4 agonizing months. My poor mother died tragically, wondering why her own flesh and blood granddaughter abandoned her in her final hours. The vicious words hit me squarely in the chest like a physical slap, because they are meticulously designed to. She is brilliantly using the massive brick wall she built between me and Grandma as undeniable proof that I simply didn't care enough to try and climb it. Betty shakes her gray head very slowly in deep disappointment. Joyce closes her tired eyes against the harsh truth. Ron straightens proudly in his creaky wooden chair, crossing his massive arms. It's absolutely true, he grunts in his rough voice. Miss Gwen didn't show her face once. We practically begged her. I open my dry mouth to scream, but what do I even say? They weren't freezing on the front porch when I frantically called 12 times in a single week. They didn't see me sobbing, desperately standing on the cold concrete. They didn't sit terrified in that dark hospice parking lot, hiding behind a metal laundry cart. All they know is the poisonous story Donna forcefully told them. And Donna has been telling terrible, convincing stories about me my entire life. The stuffy room suddenly feels incredibly small. Every single pair of staring eyes carries the exact same quiet, heavy accusation. Even Aunt Laura won't look in my direction now. Donna sits back down triumphantly, smoothly adjusting the dark fabric of her funeral dress, as she casually reaches up with one hand and delicately touches Grandma's expensive pearl earrings. The sickening gesture is almost entirely obscene. It looks exactly like a wicked queen adjusting a stolen crown on her head. And I suddenly realize this horrible moment is her absolute masterpiece. She brutally locked me out, then brilliantly turned my forced absence into devastating evidence against my character. She cruelly stole 4 precious months from me and Grandma, and now she is using those exact 4 months to completely steal my beloved grandmother's entire memory from the world, too. I have absolutely nothing left to lose in this room. I look down sadly at the oak table. My cold hands are trembling violently, and I press them harder and flatter against the wood to make it stop. But the violent shaking just doesn't quit. Maybe she's right. The dark thought comes completely uninvited, but it crashes into my brain incredibly hard. Maybe I absolutely should have tried harder. Driven straight to the police station every single day. Banged wildly on the front door. Done something much bigger besides write desperate, sad little greeting cards that probably just ended up straight in the kitchen trash can. Maybe I truly didn't deserve a single penny from Grandma because I simply didn't fight hard enough to actually deserve her love when she needed me most. I am one shallow, shaking breath away from kicking my chair back, standing up and completely walking out of this horrible nightmare. Then I look up at the head of the table. Caldwell hasn't moved a single muscle. Caldwell hasn't closed his thick folder. He hasn't stood up to shake hands. He is sitting perfectly still at the head of the dark table, his weathered hands folded neatly over the documents. On the second section, the mysterious stack pinned under the bright red clip is completely untouched. He has just been waiting. He let Donna speak her piece. He let her totally finish her grand performance. He let the whole stunned room absorb her poisonous version of the facts. And now he is sitting there with a massive hidden truth still resting right in front of him. Donna suddenly catches it too. Her cold eyes drop to the oak table. She stares hard at the red clip, and her perfectly plucked eyebrows pinch together. It is a tiny flicker of doubt, barely visible, but I see it clear as day. Mrs. Mitchell's, Caldwell says. His deep voice is unchanged. It remains as steady and unstoppable as a ticking metronome. If you are quite finished, I would very much like to continue. Donna lets out a sharp laugh. It is one short, harsh syllable, mostly just air. Oh, is there actually more? Caldwell calmly removes the red clip. It snaps off with a loud crack that echoes in the quiet room. He lifts the second heavy stack of crisp white papers and sets them squarely in front of him. There is a final amendment to this will, he announces clearly, filed exactly 4 days before Eleanor Worthington's death. The conference room goes dead silent. Not just quiet,
Silent. It is the terrifying kind of silence where you can hear the wall clock ticking, a nervous stomach turning, and the busy pigeons outside the window all at the exact same time. Donna's confident smile instantly dissolves into pure ash. What? Caldwell speaks the way a skilled surgeon works, precise, entirely unhurried, with zero wasted motion. In addition to the original will, Eleanor Worthington executed a codicil and simultaneously established a completely separate legal instrument, an irrevocable trust, 4 days before her passing.
He purposely lets that heavy word sit hanging in the air. Irrevocable. For those unfamiliar with the law, Caldwell continues smoothly. An irrevocable trust, once properly executed, cannot be revoked, amended, or contested by any party. It exists totally outside the normal probate process. Donna fiercely grips the sharp edge of the table. What trust? I never heard a single word about any secret trust. Caldwell completely ignores her outburst. He reads straight from the page. The trust legally designates the following assets to be held permanently for the sole benefit of Gwen Eleanor Mitchells. He pauses just long enough for the shocked room to feel the massive weight of my middle name. Grandma proudly gave me that name. First, the savings accounts totaling $920,000 are to be transferred into the trust in their absolute entirety. Donna's wooden chair aggressively scrapes back an inch. Second, the residential property located at tokens, measure units, address, cardinal, integer 514 Mulberry Street, as titled to be transferred directly to the trust, with Gwen Mitchells named as the sole beneficiary. Aunt Laura gasps softly. Third, the personal handwritten journals of Eleanor Worthington, 15 volumes spanning from 1982 to the exact week of her death, designated specifically and only for Gwen Mitchells. Donna springs wildly to her feet. That's not possible. She was completely out of her mind on heavy morphine. She couldn't have legally signed anything. Caldwell casually removes his wire glasses, sets them softly on the table, and looks at her with eyes like flint. The amendment was formally witnessed by a licensed hospice nurse and officially notarized by a mobile notary public. Eleanor was thoroughly assessed as 100% mentally competent by her attending physician on the exact same afternoon the documents were signed. He slides his glasses back on. The trust is bulletproof. It cannot be contested, altered, or dissolved. Donna violently slams both her palms flat onto the oak wood. Fake. Those shaky signatures are completely forged. You're making all of this up to steal from me. They are not forged, Mrs. Mitchells. A new, incredibly sharp voice interrupts. The conference room door swings wide open. A young man wearing a crisp dark suit steps confidently inside, holding a black leather briefcase. My name is Elias. I am the mobile notary public. Donna physically recoils. Her face instantly drains of all color, turning a sickly white. You, she gasps, struggling to breathe. Elias looks respectfully at Caldwell, then turns his body toward Donna. His expression is completely disgusted. Ma'am, you illegally approached me in the hospice parking lot last Tuesday. You desperately offered me $5,000 in raw cash to secretly destroy these exact legal documents. I firmly declined. I also have the entire criminal interaction recorded flawlessly on my vehicle's dashboard camera, which I have already provided directly to Mr. Caldwell. Donna's jaw physically drops. The entire room audibly gasps in horror. The steel trap has finally snapped completely shut. Betty's shaking hand covers her mouth. Joyce leans forward, utterly appalled. Aunt Laura sits perfectly frozen in shock. Furthermore, Caldwell continues smoothly, expertly ignoring Donna's total, crushing humiliation. Eleanor strictly requested that the witnessing nurse be physically available today. She wanted her to confirm the exact circumstances of the signing, just in case any party attempted to raise a false dispute. He nods respectfully toward the open door. A woman walks quietly into the room. It is someone I have seen exactly twice before, once through a dirty windshield in a freezing parking lot, and once at a sad church where she gently touched my shoulder to tell me I was fiercely loved. She sits down calmly in the empty leather chair Caldwell placed right beside his own. Her name, I finally learn in the very next breath, is Martha Davidson. Everyone calls her Marty. She is a licensed, highly respected hospice nurse with Meadowview Home Health. She was assigned strictly to my grandmother for her final 7 weeks on Earth. Marty sits tall, her tired posture suddenly vanishing. She looks at Caldwell, then turns her intense, steady gaze straight toward my trembling mother, and the entire room holds its breath as she opens her mouth to reveal the final, devastating truth. Eleanor dictated the strict terms of the trust herself, incredibly clearly and without a single moment of hesitation, Marty says. Her firm voice fills the stunned room, slicing right through the tense air. Donna's pale mouth drops wide open, but absolutely nothing comes out. She is completely paralyzed. Eleanor confided in me that her daughter had aggressively restricted her granddaughter's peaceful visits. Marty continues smoothly, her kind eyes turning sharp and accusing. She told me her daughter had deliberately snatched her cell phone right from the bedside nightstand. She clearly told me she'd been heavily pressured into signing the original will during a painful period when she was simply too weak to fight back. Joyce makes a small, horrified sound in the back of her throat. Betty slowly turns her gray head and stares furiously straight at Donna. Eleanor desperately asked me to secretly contact Gwen from my personal, private cell phone. That mysterious text message, that was entirely me, and she specifically asked me to legally witness the new documents because she urgently wanted someone completely outside the toxic family to fiercely protect her final wishes. Marty turns her head slowly and looks directly into my tear-filled eyes. Her gaze is incredibly gentle. She perfectly memorized your long phone number, Gwen, Marty adds softly. She just kept quietly reciting it in her restless sleep until I grabbed a pen and wrote it down. The entire conference room forcefully reshapes itself. I can actually feel it happening around me. It is exactly the profound way gravity drastically shifts when massive, blinding truth violently enters a dark space that has been holding a suffocating lie for months. Betty and Joyce are no longer looking at me with awful pity or cold judgment. They are looking directly at Donna in total disgust. And Donna looks completely gutted. She looks like a hollow shell that has just been brutally turned inside out in front of 7 shocked witnesses. Caldwell gracefully opens a very slim white envelope from deeply inside the red-clipped folder. Eleanor purposefully included a strict request that one very specific handwritten passage from her final personal journal be read aloud at this exact proceeding. He carefully unfolds a single photocopied page. Even from the far end of the long oak table, I instantly recognize Grandma's beautiful, looping, careful cursive handwriting. It is the exact same perfect penmanship she meticulously used to label every single sweet jam jar in her cozy pantry. Caldwell clears his throat and reads slowly. My daughter Donna has cruelly not allowed Gwen to visit my sickbed in over 3 agonizing months. She coldly took my telephone from the wooden nightstand while I slept peacefully. She forcefully brought legal papers and falsely said I desperately needed to sign them quickly. I was so incredibly tired. I signed, but I absolutely should not have. And I knew it in my heart the very second the black pen left the paper. The stuffy room is incredibly quiet. I can hear poor Aunt Laura's rapid, terrified breathing. Caldwell keeps reading steadily. I truly love my daughter, but I simply cannot let her completely take everything from Gwen. Gwen is the absolute only one who ever truly loved me without secretly wanting something shiny in return. Donna collapses hard back into her leather chair. She was deeply confused. She gasps wildly. She genuinely didn't know what she was writing. Caldwell does not even glance up from the stark white paper. He just keeps reading the terrible truth aloud. I cannot possibly say a proper goodbye to Gwenny in person. Donna viciously won't allow it, so I am sadly saying goodbye this quiet way. And absolutely everything I have, I purposefully leave to her. Not because Donna doesn't somehow deserve maternal love, but simply because Donna coldly chose money over real family, and Gwen never ever did. Aunt Laura's trembling hand is pressed tight over her pale mouth to muffle a heavy sob. Betty is openly crying. Joyce has completely physically turned her wooden chair away from Donna entirely. Donna's desperate voice cracks loudly. Those old journals don't legally prove anything in court. The handwritten entries are precisely dated and absolutely consistent across 15 thick volumes, Caldwell says smoothly, casually closing the copied page. Furthermore, Eleanor's cognitive, sharp mental state was flawlessly documented by multiple hospice staff members throughout her entire end-of-life care. Hot tears are streaming silently down my flushed face. I am not crying because of the massive pile of money. I am definitely not crying because I suddenly own the big house on Mulberry Street. I am weeping because my incredible grandmother fiercely fought a massive war for me from a tiny bed she physically couldn't even leave. With only a cheap pen, a brave nurse, and a brilliant plan she meticulously built in absolute secret, she powerfully said goodbye the only real way they let her. Donna spins violently toward Caldwell. Her frantic voice shakes terribly, but it is pure, boiling anger now, not fake grief. I'll legally contest this immediately. She was actively dying. She was heavily medicated. No real judge in this state will ever uphold this fake garbage. Caldwell calmly folds his strong hands together.
It is the exact same relaxed posture he has held all afternoon long. Not a single silver hair on his head is out of place. Mrs. Mitchells, I will repeat this one final time. The trust is strictly irrevocable. It was legally established as a completely separate instrument, totally independent of the contested will. It is absolutely not subject to normal probate, and it cannot be contested through that messy process. A fully licensed physician documented Eleanor's total mental competency on the exact day of execution. The notarization is flawlessly valid. The witness is a licensed healthcare professional with zero personal connection to the named beneficiary. Every single heavy sentence he speaks lands exactly like a massive steel vault door slamming shut in her face. Donna violently spins around in her chair to face me.
Her careful composure is completely gone. Her expensive makeup is totally smudged under her wild eyes. Her large hands are shaking furiously. The beautiful, careful performance of the grieving daughter is entirely stripped away, leaving only raw rage. "You somehow did this to me," she hisses, spit flying from her painted lips. "You tricked her. You somehow put her up to this." I slowly look straight at my furious mother, and for the very first time today, I finally speak out loud. "I didn't know a single thing about any of this until exactly 10 minutes ago. You are a terrible liar. I haven't spoken a single word to Grandma in 4 long months, Mom." My quiet voice is completely level. "I don't need to raise it. I simply don't have to anymore. You meticulously made absolutely sure of that." The entire room holds its collective breath in total shock. Ron's thick arms have nervously uncrossed. He is actually leaning his large body physically away from Donna now, desperately trying to distance himself, exactly like a terrified man who just slowly realized he is standing far too close to a massive ticking bomb that is about to completely obliterate everything. The fake narrative my mother meticulously built, the devoted, beautiful daughter and the horrible, ungrateful granddaughter, is entirely crumbling in front of 7 shocked witnesses. She simply cannot spin fresh lies fast enough to rebuild it. Caldwell turns his calm attention to me. "Miss Mitchells, do you have absolutely anything you would like to say on the record?" I stand up. I do not rush the movement. I carefully smooth the front of my charcoal dress. Grandma would have wanted me to look put together today, and I look slowly around the stuffy room. I meet the eyes of Betty, Joyce, Aunt Laura, Ron, and sweet Marty. Finally, my gaze lands directly on my mother. "I am not going to fight with you, Mom," I say quietly. "Grandma made her final decision, and I am going to honor it exactly the same way I would have honored her if you had actually let me see her." Donna's jaw tightens so hard her teeth could crack. "You do not deserve a single penny of it." "Maybe," I reply without blinking, "but Grandma clearly thought I did." I hold her furious stare. In this silent room, Eleanor's written voice is the absolute only one that matters now. My mother has zero answer for that undeniable fact, not because she forgot how to speak, but because there is absolutely nothing left she can say that these 7 people will ever believe again. I turn back to the silver-haired attorney. "Mr. Caldwell, I would like to formally accept the trust exactly as written. Furthermore, I would like to instantly proceed with changing the front door locks on my grandmother's house this very week." He nods once, deeply respectfully. "I will personally handle all the necessary paperwork." I calmly pick up my purse. I politely push my wooden chair neatly under the oak table, simply because Grandma raised me to always leave a room exactly the way I found it. I walk tall toward the heavy exit. Behind my back, Donna's voice echoes. It is stripped completely raw and ugly. "You will regret this. You are a disgrace." I do not turn around. I do not offer a single response. I walk confidently through the doorway, down the creaky, narrow stairs, right past the dusty hardware store, and out into the bright afternoon sun. The town square is peaceful. Little kids are still playfully chasing gray pigeons. The busy world has absolutely no idea what monumental justice just happened in that 3rd-floor conference room. But I know. Grandma knew, and right now that is more than enough. Before I can even slip the key into my car door, heavy, frantic footsteps loudly pound the concrete pavement directly behind me. "Gwen, wait a second. It is Ron." He looks completely panicked, sweating profusely right through his tight dress shirt. He nervously glances over his thick shoulder back at the brick building, desperately making sure his furious wife isn't following him. "Gwen, please listen to me," he pants, wiping his wet forehead. "I had absolutely no idea she was acting this evil. I swear to you, I always begged her to let you visit. We are family, right?"
Maybe we can just quietly split the house. Just you and me. I can easily manage the rental property for you. I freeze and stare blankly at this pathetic creature. This is the exact monster who proudly stood like a bouncer at my grandmother's deathbed. The very man I secretly heard begging a doctor to rush her tragic end so he could get paid faster. I do not waste a single syllable on him.
I slide into my driver's seat, roll the glass window firmly upright in his bright red, sweating face, hit the automatic locks, and drive quickly away. I leave him coughing alone in a cloud of cheap exhaust. Small towns possess incredibly short memories, but extremely fast mouths. Within one single week, absolutely everyone who matters knows the dark truth. Not because I bragged about it. I didn't tell a soul. The shocking story simply walked right out of that stuffy conference room on 6 different pairs of legs and rapidly spread like wild weather. Betty calls me crying on a quiet Sunday morning. Her shaky voice is thick with something heavy between deep shame and profound grief. "Gwen, sweetie, I owe you a massive apology for the terrible funeral. The awful way we looked at you. We had absolutely no idea Donna forcefully kept you away. Your sweet grandmother talked about you constantly. She proudly showed us your beautiful greeting cards, the bright ones you faithfully mailed every single week. She kept them perfectly stacked in a little wicker basket right by her pillow. She got them. My knees completely buckle. I have to sit down hard on my kitchen floor. Grandma got my cards. She held my words in her frail hands. Joyce phones that exact same afternoon. She says almost the identical thing, then fiercely adds, "We strictly told Donna we will not be attending her fancy Christmas gathering this year, or any year ever again." Aunt Laura drives straight to my tiny apartment. She stands awkwardly in my open doorway and sobs. I should have bravely asked more questions. I knew deep down something was terribly off. Donna was way too controlling about the hospice visits, too incredibly insistent that everything was perfectly fine. But I was cowardly. I didn't want to get involved. "Well, you are involved now," I tell her gently. She nods, wiping her wet cheeks. Through Laura, I quickly hear the massive fallout. Donna spent the following desperate week frantically calling every single estate attorney within a 150-mile radius. Not one single professional would touch her toxic case, a flawlessly executed irrevocable trust, backed by solid physician documentation and a highly credible independent medical witness. There is zero legal angle of attack. Every single lawyer told her the exact same brutal truth. It is legally done. Ron predictably has completely stopped being her supportive rock. The massive inheritance he selfishly counted on totally evaporated in a single devastating afternoon. And now all that is left of their marriage is Donna's towering credit card debt and the crushing second mortgage on their house. He and Donna scream at each other every single night, loud enough for horrified neighbors to hear clearly through the walls. Exactly 3 weeks after the dramatic reading, my cell phone vibrates on the counter. Donna. I almost ignore the incoming call, but something deep inside my soul knows this is going to be the absolute last conversation we will have for a very long time. I want to walk away totally clean. I press the green button and lift it to my ear. "Gwen?" Her tone has drastically changed. The vicious sharpness is entirely gone. Now it is soft, incredibly pleading. It is her famous victim voice. I have heard it deployed my whole miserable life. It was usually aimed like a weapon at other gullible people, but this time it is aimed directly at me. "Gwen, please listen to me," she whimpers, her breath hitching exactly like a trapped, desperate animal suddenly realizing the iron cage door is permanently locked shut. "I'm your mother. You simply cannot shut me out like this," she cries, her voice trembling with manufactured tears. "I took care of Grandma for years. I sacrificed. I legally deserve something." I close my eyes. This is it, the final manipulation. "You definitely deserve to be completely heard, Mom," I reply. "So I am listening very closely. Tell me, what exactly did you do for Grandma in those last 4 horrible months?" Total, suffocating silence stretches across the line. "You cruelly took her cell phone," I say, my voice terrifyingly calm. "You firmly locked her bedroom door. You openly lied to her oldest neighbors and said she'd moved away. You forcefully kept me completely away from her lonely deathbed. Every single sentence I speak is a heavy, undeniable fact, not a wild accusation. And then you proudly stood up at her sad funeral and loudly told a room full of grieving people that I maliciously abandoned her." I just did what I absolutely had to do," she stammers weakly. "And Grandma did exactly what she had to do," I fire back. Another long, agonizing pause. I can hear her uneven, ragged breathing scraping against the receiver. I do love you, Mom. I always will, but I absolutely do not trust you anymore. And I am never going to let you brutally control me the way you controlled her in the end. Do not ever call this number again unless you are finally ready to be completely, truly honest about what you did. I press the red button. Click. The line goes dead. That single phone call is one of the hardest things I have ever done in my entire life. A tiny, broken part of my heart desperately wanted to forgive her right then and there. Another part violently wanted to scream until my throat bled. But a much quieter, wiser part kept wondering, did she ever really love Grandma? Or was it always just about the shiny money? Without Grandma's massive bank accounts acting as a safety net, harsh reality catches up to Donna incredibly fast. Aunt Laura nervously fills me in over warm coffee, not to spread cheap gossip, but because she firmly believes I need to know the whole truth. Donna secretly owes a staggering $48,000 in high-interest credit card debt. She and Ron recklessly took out a massive second mortgage 3 years ago just to remodel their luxury kitchen. But it is actually much worse than that. Aunt Laura whispers that Ron recently committed to a massive, crushing balloon payment on a new commercial work truck, banking entirely on his wife's stolen inheritance to easily cover the massive check. The final deadline is next week. If he defaults, he completely loses his entire business. He foolishly built a lavish budget around blood money that was never legally his. Now there is zero inheritance coming, and Ron is exactly the kind of angry man who always keeps a strict score. Their explosive arguments aren't hidden behind closed doors anymore. The terrified neighbors on both sides of their property have clearly heard the vicious shouting matches late at night. Ron sleeps angrily in the cold guest room. Aunt Laura says he has already consulted an attorney, not a fancy estate lawyer this time, a ruthless divorce attorney. Donna desperately tries to rebuild her shattered reputation at Sunday church. She tearfully tells the congregation a twisted version of the tragic story where she is the wronged, innocent mother and I am the scheming, greedy grandchild. But Betty and Joyce got their way before she did. They told the honest truth quietly to the exact people who actually mattered. After the morning service, the stern pastor politely pulls Donna aside for a very private, hushed conversation in the hallway. She does not return the following Sunday, or the one after that. A week later, a long email lands in my inbox. 5 desperate paragraphs. I'm so sorry. I was incredibly scared. I was completely in over my head. Can we please just start over? I read every single typed word. I sit silently with the heavy message. I think about sweet Grandma, who unconditionally loved Donna despite absolutely everything. The woman who bravely wrote in her private journal that she constantly wondered where Donna's deep selfishness originally came from, and whether she was somehow partly to blame for it. I do not type a response. I delete it. Not because I am acting cruel, but because I finally learned a massive, life-changing lesson. It tragically took me 29 years to fully understand it. Every single tearful apology from my mother has always been a secret, hidden door right back to her toxic control. And this time I actively choose to keep that heavy door permanently closed and locked tight. The very first time I bravely slide my shiny new key into the brass lock of tokens, measured guined, units, address cardinal integer 514 Mulberry Street, I step inside the dark entryway and just stand there for a full preserve_order true, quiet minute to simply breathe. The beautiful house smells exactly the way it always has. Sweet orange oil, dusty old library books, and something incredibly warm underneath that I can only accurately describe as Grandma. I walk slowly into the kitchen. Her bright yellow curtains with the tiny stitched flowers are still cheerfully catching the afternoon sunlight. Her favorite velvet armchair in the corner still perfectly holds the soft shape of her body. The colorful crocheted blanket she always kept folded on the back of it is exactly where her frail hands left it. I walk silently through every single room like I am visiting a sacred private museum of the absolute best parts of my entire childhood. I gently touch the faded pencil marks on the wooden kitchen doorframe where she proudly measured my growing height every single birthday. I brush my fingers over the sunny living room windowsill where she carefully watered her purple African violets. I peek into the dusty little reading nook safely tucked under the wooden stairs, where I used to happily hide with a bright plastic flashlight and a massive stack of borrowed library books. Finally, I gather my courage and step into her quiet bedroom. Right there, sitting neatly on the sturdy wooden shelf beside the large window, I finally find them. 15 thick journals. They all have dark green leather covers, carefully numbered in her elegant handwriting, 1982 to 2025. 43 remarkable years of a brilliant woman's deep interior life. They are lined up perfectly straight, exactly like brave little soldiers guarding her memories. I sink slowly down onto the soft carpeted floor, cross my legs, and gently open the very last volume. I turn carefully to the final written page. It has my name boldly written at the very top. Gwenny, it reads, the blue ink slightly smudged. If you are reading these words right now, it means my secret plan actually worked. Please do not be sad for me today. Be incredibly brave, and please do not ever let anyone make you feel small again. Love always, Grandma. E. My breath totally hitches in my dry throat as I press the final beautiful page wide open, suddenly noticing something incredibly important that I almost completely missed. Right there, beneath her elegant looping signature, the thick paper is slightly wrinkled, a single dried teardrop stain. She cried while she wrote this to me. I press the heavy green journal tightly to my chest, and I finally break down. I cry, but these are not the numb, shocking tears from the cold funeral. They are not the frustrated, angry sobs from the dark hospice parking lot. These are the rare, sacred tears you only cry when someone who truly loved you reaches across the impossible, vast distance of death and places their warm hand softly on your shoulder one last time. She could not say a proper goodbye in person, so she bravely wrote it down and faithfully trusted the universe would make sure it found me. It found me. I officially move into the Mulberry Street house on a freezing, snowy Saturday in late January. Aunt Laura kindly helps me carry heavy cardboard boxes inside. The old place definitely needs some serious work. The wooden front porch railing is dangerously loose. The upstairs bathroom faucet drips a steady rhythm all night, and the ancient heating system makes a strange groaning sound like a stray cat trapped inside the walls. But it is mine. It is Grandma's ultimate gift, and I swear I am going to take beautiful care of it exactly the way she took care of me. I carefully use a portion of the massive trust to instantly pay off my crushing student loans. $35,000 gone in a single computer click. I immediately set up a secure savings account for the future. I do not go out and buy a flashy new car. I do not wildly redecorate the cozy rooms. I simply keep teaching 3rd grade at Meadowbrook Elementary. My sweet students have absolutely no idea anything in my life has dramatically changed, and that is exactly how I want it to stay. Every single evening after grading spelling papers, I curl up in her velvet armchair and read a few fragile pages of Grandma's journals. She beautifully writes about her own innocent girlhood in this very house. She writes about marrying Grandpa, a kind man who sadly passed away long before I was ever born. She writes about the profound joys of raising Donna. And here the faded pages get deeply complicated. She loved my mother fiercely, but she clearly saw the dark selfishness growing very early on. She writes about Donna's greed with far more profound sadness than bitter anger. In one particularly painful entry from the winter of 2011, Eleanor writes, Donna slowly learned to take from somewhere, and I am deeply afraid she might have learned it from watching me give way too much of myself. She wasn't just legally protecting me from ruin, she was bravely reckoning with her own painful part in our family's tragic story. Even at the very end, her spirit never broke. I call Marty the nurse to properly thank her for everything. We meet up at a busy, warm diner in town. Over hot coffee and pancakes, she tells me beautiful things I will carry in my heart forever. Your grandmother was the bravest, sharpest patient I ever had, Marty says, smiling fondly. She meticulously planned every single detail from that hospice bed, the secret trust, the hidden codicil, the journals, the perfect timing. She made me call Mr. Caldwell 3 separate times just to make sure every single legal loophole was closed tight. Marty laughs softly, and she smiled the whole time she did it. That is my grandma, fighting a massive war with nothing but a cheap pen and a brilliant smile. I used to falsely think that being a good daughter meant never, ever saying no. I wrongly thought silence equaled loyalty. I genuinely believed that if I just loved hard enough, if I was endlessly patient, if I made myself small enough, my mother would eventually learn to love me back the same way. Grandma taught me something entirely different. Not through boring lectures or unsolicited advice. She taught it through what she boldly did from a sterile hospital bed, with a rapidly failing body and a crystal clear mind. She taught me that truly protecting someone you love sometimes means making the incredibly hard, painful choice, even when it severely costs you your own temporary peace. I do not hate my mother. I want to be very clear about that fact. I do not wish anything bad to happen to her. Some quiet nights, I still stare at the ceiling and think about that desperate email she sent. Can we start over? And a tiny part of my soul aches. She is my mom. That biological pull simply does not go away, but I have finally stopped waiting around for her to magically become someone she is simply not. Here is exactly where things stand today. I do not call Donna. She does not call me. If that silent boundary changes someday, it will strictly be because she is finally ready to be honest, not because I weakly caved in. I do not let Ron's pathetic begging texts ever get past my phone's block list. I happily see Aunt Laura every other week for a loud, messy dinner. She is actively learning to cook Grandma's famous recipes very badly, and we laugh until our ribs ache about her burnt pie crusts. I keep in close, warm touch with Betty and Joyce. I read Grandma's final journals incredibly slowly because I simply do not want her beautiful voice to ever end. And I live peacefully in the big house on Mulberry Street. I watched some online videos and fixed the loose porch railing entirely by myself. The upstairs faucet still drips a little bit. I will eventually get to it. On warm, breezy evenings, I sit outside on the wooden porch swing where Grandma used to tightly hold me. I slowly push my feet off the floorboards, watch the quiet street slowly go dark, and I feel something I haven't felt in a very, very long time. Solid ground. I am 29 years old, and for the very first time in my life, I am firmly standing on it. That is my true story. I honestly never planned to share it with the world. But if my grandmother's brave fight helps even one single person out there realize they are not crazy for wanting healthy boundaries with the toxic people who are supposed to love them, then every single painful word was completely worth it. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. If this emotional journey made you feel something real, please hit subscribe and leave a comment below. I promise I read every single one. And if you have ever had someone fiercely protect you the exact way my amazing grandma protected me, tell me all about them. I would absolutely love to hear it. There is another incredible story linked right down in the description that I think you will deeply connect with. Check it out when you are ready to feel your heart beat a little faster.